sometimes it feels like you're playing a slot machine game. Um, Sometimes the chatbot or the LLM is going to do the right thing, sometimes going to do the wrong thing, and sometimes going to be slightly off. And this is kind of the point of this entire seminar. Now I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the chat. What Claude's gonna be doing, and Codex does the same thing, and OpenCode does the same thing, so all of them do the same thing. It's gonna be searching everything, so it's gonna get the lay of the land. The problem with this is you're gonna be consuming your context window, and context windows are a precious resource. I have a lecture on the 14th of April on that topic. But essentially, one needs to be careful with what we're filling the context window with. The second item to be aware is that these models tend to have the do not invent it here syndrome. And it basically boils down to one simple aspect. If given the choice between using previous code or generating code from scratch, they will prefer to generate code from scratch. And this is where sometimes we get into trouble because there's a reason we have statistical libraries that had like work done through them over a lot of years, ironing bugs and such. Nothing fancy about this data set. It's 36 monthly rows. So we have 54 data points. We have a dependent variable. It's basically sales volume. We have paid media channels and we have controls. And I kind of did it on purpose because this is what you do see in real life. There's some slightly annoying things about this data set. For one, it's a mixture of exposure metrics like clicks and impressions and the spend metrics. And MMM 101, you need to choose one of them. MMM 102, usually you prefer the exposure metric. And also you have some highly correlated variables. So you have meta spans 1 and 2, and then you have the aggregation of that meta spend, that meta spend. So the idea here, I'm telling it, use the geometric add stock and how to select things. So this is the other thing. If you don't, if you're not prescriptive enough, these models tend to behave like an overly intelligent, very junior analyst and do very dumb things. Now, it needs to know how to select variables. In certain cases, you want to guarantee that given the same problem, you will get the same answer. And we want to guarantee that if this type of workflow is calculating things like add stock, that it's always using the same variables and is always using the same functions and the same methods. Each time you're running this and the model is generating on the fly, there is a probability that you're going to be pulling some vibe coded slop out of the distribution. And this is why, and again, this another it could be its own talk entirely, a little bit more off the rails, and it actually included YouTube spend and YouTube views on my first run. This is kind of my fifth run. So I don't like playing this slot machine game. And skills, proper skills, which is a skill in itself, how to design skills, do help a lot on this little endeavor. So if we, for those who don't know what skills are, so all of this engineering, all of this conversation relies upon filling the context window with the prompts, basically. In Claude Code in particular, the skills are progressively disclosed. So when Claude Code starts, it checks what are the skills I have. It reads just the front matter, i.e. the description. And then if the skill gets triggered, then he's gonna load the skill and read through it. Okay. Now there's a little bit of a balance, and I'm explaining this while he runs. There's a little bit of a balance between being helpful with the skill and being too prescriptive. you want to give some freedom to the model, i.e., do not over prescribe like you're doing in a workflow, because not all analyses are the same. But if you guide it and tell it, like when you're doing variable selection, you need to consider if a variable is a confounder or a mediator, its position in the DAG, then the model will understand better. And you can see that it's exposure versus spend. So you can see that, for instance, in this run, you will never get a model where you have YouTube spend and YouTube views in the same model, because the skill itself determines, look out for this. This is something you need to be careful with. And the other thing is that now we have a predetermined flow. Now, this is a very simplified example, but now we have variable selections, and now we at least have an understanding and a grounding of why are we choosing or eliminating specific variables. We correlator with sales. To be fair, we want to have monthly data, so if we had weekly data, we probably could do a little bit more. But interestingly, which is something that the other model did not select, was structural drops. Meta 1 spends and Meta 2 spends are a subset of a specific variable. So you need to choose. The other is influencer is a very sparse data set. 75% of the data set is zeros. So it's going to introduce some spurious correlations into the noise. LLM evaluation, this type of analytical workflow evaluation, is a statistical endeavor, because LLMs are statistical in nature, which means you need to look at you need to do like 10 passes or multiple passes. And bottom line is, Claude knows how to do a linear regression, but he doesn't know the intricacies. And this is where also marketing analysts in general, we're not going to go anywhere. We still need to guide these models. Now, there's 3 big failure modes to watch out for. One is blind trust, or evals. But evals are important because these models sometimes can spew nonsense. The other is reproducibility, and I'll leave context for last. The other is reproducibility, making sure that you can save your code and reproduce it every time and get the same result every time, and making sure that instead of the LLM hallucinating some number, it actually ran the code that generates a specific input or output, which is analytics. It's kind of important. We don't want hallucinated data sent back to the chief marketing officer to make $1 million decisions on budgets. To which the model answers, oh, you're absolutely right. And we all had that experience of the model saying, you're absolutely right. And that's when you know you're entering the dumb zone. So context drift is important, where the AI is gonna there's a developer called, I can't remember his name, but basically he shares an opinion that I do share. Agents should not be anthropomorphized. There shouldn't be specific roles. Agents are for context management. Agents is when you want to do something and you don't want your context window filling up. For instance, you want to query your database and you don't want all of the junk coming into your main context window. That's usually how I try agents. And I do try some multiple agents, but usually it's like I need to query Google Ads data, and I just want the model to go, or I want to do some research, and I want the model to search for something and just summarize it back. So agents are dangerous, and be careful when you're assigning them roles. So I don't have a data scientist agent or a SQL analyst agent. It's a summarizer agent or a BigQuery agent.